Welcome to Rise Up in Business, the law podcast for small business owners. I'm your host, Tracy Milacrane. I'm a business lawyer, an entrepreneur, and very much a realist. Rise Up in Business is designed to share with small business owners important legal information and some clever tips and tricks in short and sharp episodes, no legal jargon. With this podcast, I want to empower small business owners to rise up and take control in their business. I'll be here every Wednesday to tell you exactly what you need to know without sending you to sleep. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome to episode 5. I'm really happy to be preparing this episode, and I really hope that you are enjoying taking some time out from your business to learn a little more about all things legal for small business owners. Today I want to talk about business terms and conditions and the Australian consumer law. So I talk a lot about business legals, and you now know that part of the business legal framework are your business terms and conditions. When I talk about business terms and conditions, I'm focusing on service-based businesses. I will dive a little deeper into e-commerce businesses a little later in the season. Today in this episode, I want to talk in general terms about the Australian consumer law and who it applies to. All of my small business clients fall under the umbrella of the Australian consumer law. So when I'm preparing this episode, I'm directing my comments to small business owners whose individual goods or services are valued at less than $40,000 per transaction and who engage in regular business. So that is all of my clients. The Australian consumer law, in simple terms, is a set of legal rules that's been created to protect consumers. And when I say consumers, I mean clients, customers, whatever you might refer to your consumer as. For the purpose of this podcast, I'll just use the reference consumers, but that's clients and customers too. The consumer law applies to small businesses who sell goods or services to consumers within Australia. Small businesses, large businesses, new businesses, established businesses. It applies to all of us. So it contains standards that business owners need to comply with when they're selling goods or services to consumers. It really is that simple. It's a set of rules that govern things that we as business owners must do and, importantly, must not do. The main objectives of the consumer law can be summarised, I think, in 3 key points. One is wanting to uphold high standards for consumers. So this relates to things like fair contracts and avoiding misleading and deceptive conduct. 2, it wants to follow high standards for safety of products. And 3, it wants to ensure that sales practices are appropriate. So what does that mean for you as a small business owner? So when you're dealing with consumers, you need to set out for consumers really clearly and in advance of them deciding to do business with you, what your terms and conditions are. This is where your business legals come into play. This is where your business terms and conditions or your service agreement is critical because you need to set out certain things for your clients, for the consumer, before they decide to engage you. So that means that a line or two at the bottom of your first invoice or at the bottom of your quote is highly unlikely to comply with your obligations under the consumer law. I say highly unlikely because I can't see any circumstance where that's actually going to cut it, where that's going to be enough. I tell all of my clients that no, for several reasons, that's not appropriate. One of those reasons is because it's not going to meet your obligations under the consumer law. So really vital to get that business T's and C's or your service agreement or your terms of trade spot on and right. The second thing this is going to mean for you as a small business owner is that your advertising has to be honest. Your pricing has to be clearly outlined. Again, ties back to your business service agreement or your business terms and conditions. As a small business owner, you need to follow through with consumer refunds or repairs or replacements. You need to understand and comply with your warranty obligations. If you're selling products, you need to make sure that they're safe. And lastly, all contracts, so contracts that you issue from your business and contracts that are issued to you in your business need to be fair. So there's a lot more to fairness than what's your opinion or my opinion or the opinion of somebody else, and there is a lot of law around what is fair. So when you're preparing your contracts, when you're preparing your business legals, you need to make sure that each provision is fair as prescribed by the consumer law. Again, going back to something that I mentioned in the previous episode, this is one of the reasons why I'm uncomfortable with small business owners using templates for their legals. Because how do you know what each of these points means? How do you know, for example, what's fair? So that's just one of the reasons why, again, I don't recommend the use of templates for your business legals. Back to the consumer law. For service-based businesses, your business terms and conditions, or your service agreement, is your key document for ensuring that you comply with your obligations under the consumer law. For e-commerce businesses, your most critical documents are going to be your website terms and conditions, your privacy policy, your warranty policy and your guarantees, and your refunds and returns policy. I'm going to dive deeper into e-commerce businesses in another episode later in this season. Now that we've understood the primary objectives of the consumer law and how it applies to you as a small business owner, the question then comes up, or the question is, what happens if you don't comply with the consumer law? There's a couple of things to say about that. First of all, there is legislation that exists which can see a business have a financial penalty imposed if it fails to meet its obligations under the consumer law. And this can be in addition to court orders that can be awarded against a business who has failed to meet its obligations under the consumer law if a consumer brings legal proceedings. Obviously, if legal proceedings are commenced against you and you fail to comply with your obligations under the consumer law, then you're unlikely to have a very strong position to start with. So you're not going to have much to work with, generally speaking, to defend yourself in any such proceedings. Secondly, orders can be made for corrective advertising if that's an issue. And in practical terms, if you haven't complied with your obligations under the consumer law and you end up in a dispute with one of your customers, one of your clients, over your terms and conditions, if it's found that your terms and conditions, so your service agreement or your terms of trade, are unfair, then you won't actually be able to enforce that contract at all, and there could be some significant financial consequences that flow from that. That's quite separate to the reputational damage that can occur. So in terms of your business terms and conditions and ensuring that you comply with the consumer law, it's really important to remember that we don't know what we don't know, and that's okay. As small business owners, you are not expected to know everything. That's why you surround yourself with a team of experts who can advise you properly and who do know the ins and outs of things like this. And surrounding yourself with a team of experts that can do all those things to support you can be one of the wisest investments you make in your business. So, in a nutshell, if you're a small business owner, you will have obligations that you need to comply with under the consumer law. Understanding what they are is critical because there are consequences if you don't comply. I hope that's been of value. I hope that that's been clear. If there's any confusion that's arisen out of that, or if there's any questions whatsoever, please reach out. That's what I'm here for. Always happy to help. That's it for today's episode. Short and sharp, just like I promised. If you liked the episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes, and I would be most grateful if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts. As always, remember to keep your business legals in order with my Business Legal Strength Check. Grab your free copy by heading over to my website, tmsolicitor.com.au. I'll catch you next Wednesday. Thanks so much for listening.